It's that time again, Our Town Live, where friends, family, people you know, and others you'd rather not know share with us their unique bits of wisdom. And now, here's Herb, your host, for another show.
Because of the hundreds of requests I've had from pet owners concerned about their pet's nutrition, the following episodes will be dedicated to the pros and cons of feeding a bones and raw food called BARF diet to your dogs and cats. The importance of a correct diet is stressed by Karen Shaw Becker, probably the most followed veterinarian in the world. Dr. Becker believes in a deliberate, common-sense approach to creating and maintaining vibrant health for companion animals and an unconventional integrative approach to addressing disease and reestablishing health in all ill pets. Karen feels
every species has its own requirement. Each species must eat what it is supposed to eat. It's developed, evolved to have a specific diet that keeps it healthy.
Each animal has its own biologic requirement for certain nutrients. A species-appropriate diet for worms is dirt. A species-appropriate diet, let's say for hummingbirds, would be nectar. You can't feed earthworms nectar and you can't feed hummingbirds dirt. Both of those animals would simply die. Some species, when you offer them not biologically appropriate foods, they simply won't consume them. When you offer a snake, another obligate carnivore, a salad, they will simply starve to death. They will not consume a non-biologically appropriate food in light of sustaining life. They simply die. It gets pretty confusing with dogs and cats, however, because dogs and cats are nutritionally much more resilient than other species. And what that means is that we can nutritionally abuse them, for lack of a better term, and they don't die immediately. They just have overall vitality decline and overall degenerative changes take place in their bodies from feeding them foods that are not biologically appropriate.
And now, a few words from Rebecca Greenstein, Chief Veterinarian of Kleinberg Veterinary Hospital in Ontario, Canada.
There seems to be a link between these grain-free pet foods that are very high in legumes, and we're not entirely sure whether it's the legumes or whether it's the fact that there's often exotic meats like bison or kangaroo.
Yeah, I'm surprised by the kangaroo, really?
It's really common. A lot of our patients are actually very enthusiastic about eating these what's called novel proteins, but essentially there seems to be some sort of alteration in the way that nutrients become bioavailable. There is a link between heart disease and taurine, and it seems to be that it's just affecting the amino acid profile. And we're not entirely sure, and the investigation is ongoing.
So, pet food is not regulated in this country, which is a really, that's a broader question of, first of all, why is it not regulated? What's your interpretation of why that is not regulated?
It's shocking that it's not. And every so often we have a major crisis like this. There's the vitamin D excesses or the melamine scandals. And a lot of the actual recalls are voluntary. Even the nutrient content and reporting it is a voluntary process. The companies don't have to do it.
How do we know if we're feeding our dogs safe food then, if it's not regulated?
That's a really good question. I think the most underutilized resource in this whole puzzle is talking to your veterinarian. So that is a huge part of what we do, making up these diets and sort of deciding to feed them based on what we want to eat or what a bag says is premium when it really isn't. That's a really dangerous way to go about it.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that, because how did this sort of trend even start? And why is it so popular? Is it because that people just buy into the most expensive product, or they see things like premium or, top, whatever it is, and so they think, oh, I'm getting the best for my dog?
It's actually pretty interesting how this all started, and there are a few theories. So in the wake of, there was a 2007 recall from melamine-contaminated gluten out of China. And then that became sort of generalized, oh, wheat is bad, and then grains are bad, and that also sort of parallels the rise of this grain-free trend in the United States. But 30% of Americans, almost 10 years ago, were trying to eat less grain, but only 1% are celiac. Right. We drove this trend. Very few dogs are celiac, and now we're seeing the consequences of it.
So we're basically just projecting onto these animals.
Entirely. And vets have been saying this for quite some time, that they're not miniature people as much as we love them, but it's quite interesting that we're seeing some huge consequences. Dogs are dying in many ways because of our own vanity.
They need grain.
They
Portion?
Absolutely. It's the nutrient profile.
Yeah.
There's no reason they can't be fed grain for the most part. But monkeying with their diets is a really dangerous proposition.
So how do I know if my dog is having some ill effect or is getting sick because of this?
That's a great question. So the problem is something called dilated cardiomyopathy, or DCM, and that manifests as it's heart disease or failure of the heart to pump. So you'll see, let's say, anything from lethargy, panting excessively, cough, difficulty breathing, or even collapse. Definitely, if you're worried about any of these things, you check in with your vet, and there's further testing that we can do.
Now that you've heard a few opinions on the subject, our listeners would like to hear what you have to say. Please visit worldwidepetsupplies.org/interview for more information on how to schedule a telephone interview. That's worldwidepetsupplies.org/interview. Thanks. And don't forget to listen to the next episode of Our Town Live.